are having Mr. Sudhanshu, Mr. Milan, Miss Ruhi, and Mr. Keith with us in the panel. So I hope every one of you are having a really good time to listen to all our panelists' insights about the topic going on right now. So we have got a very interesting topic if we'll talk about, that is new organizational order and recruitment challenges. So giving a bit of a context to it, I would like to add on that recruitment strategies and onboarding efforts have witnessed many changes in their operations during the pandemic that will forever after their working post pandemic too. So, while work from home is expected to increase the female workforce here, small town aspirants and geographically distant talent pools as well. HR team will have to prepare face a significantly changed workforce as organization recover. So moving ahead with that, I would like to start with Mr. Keith, sir. Sir, I would like to ask you that how has the rapid technological adoption also opened the doors for new job profiles in the company ranks? And what do you think that would you agree that freelancer and consultants are in vogue for that same?
Yeah, great. No, thank you for the invitation and great to be part of this panel and people are pleased with the discussion so far. So I would say, you only have to look at the research that's suggesting that, ultimately by 2030, 85 million jobs will be, technology orientated. For us at Cyient, that means that we have to essentially accelerate our hiring for 5 years time, 10 years time. We're looking to build the skills and ultimately buy some of those skills. So we have a clear roadmap. We have to go from almost 30 digital expertise to 500 to 1,000 within the next scale of a year to 2 years. So you can extrapolate that out to the next 5 years. Our business has to be significantly orientated towards technology and digital capability. So yes, that's there. I would say in terms of your question around freelancer and contractors, I think they will have their place in operating as another additional layer of our workforce, because that capability can be embedded in our organization and work with our organization, and we can flex with that. So I think that still will be there across both India and globally for us, I would say. So yeah, that's certainly in our plans.
Okay, sir. So great to know your insights about the same. So we are having Mr. Sudhanshu as well joining here. Good afternoon, sir. Hello.
Good afternoon.
So, good afternoon. So we were actually having a discussion and we had the insights of Mr. Keith now. So moving ahead, I would like to ask you, sir, that to present your views on, do you think work from home is the answer to fostering diversity and inclusion in the workforce? How you go ahead with that, sir?
There are two segments of workplace. Whatever we are discussing on work from home, it is mostly, we are limiting ourselves to the knowledge workers or the white collar workers. But the world has around 80% which are blue collar workers. Most of the discussions that happen is around this white collar workforce working from home. Of course, it is beneficial for diversity population to join in the work from home. Not only necessarily, women as a diversity segment, but if you look at it is true for all kind of diversity for rural population. Or I am having challenges to work to shift to another city and I joined the workforce. So I think it is, of course, beneficial for the white collar population where knowledge works and where IT integrates to the work. But when the factories or agricultural lands, bridges, a lot of infrastructure projects, without people, you cannot do anything there actually. And that is where, can you really make a work from home for the nurses? Where patients will go? Let us understand that as a challenge. So 80-90%, I don't have a solid calculation. Whatever I'm referring from the internet and all. But 85% of people who are working, they are working on fields, they are working on factories, they are working. So it is still going to be a challenge, and there will be a segment of population which will prefer working from home, but not necessarily across industries, across segments.
Okay, good to know, sir. So thank you. If I'll talk about the same, what are your point of views and insights, Ms. Ruhi, if I'll talk to you about the same? That do you think work from home? Yeah.
The question about the diversity piece?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, great. Yeah, good. Very good evening to all my co-panelists and everyone on this call. Very happy to be here. And we are discussing like a very pertinent challenge on recruitment which to that extent remains like a backbone of any organization. So if I specifically come to diversity, I think I think we are still in a bit of a flux, if you ask me, because there are two aspects to it. So organizations at one point in time, if you would ask me about a couple of years back before the pandemic stuck, and when we would talk to line leaders, at Godrej, we always had a policy of allowing our employees to work from home, which was more to provide people flexibility, more women, I would say, because they can kind of execute some of the part of the work from home, take care of their domestic responsibilities. And the idea was to encourage more and more women to come into the workforce. Now, but I would see hesitation in a lot of leaders because there was the thought in the mind that work cannot be done from home. There's a very, very strong mindset which leaders used to carry, which used to constantly. So they used to say that if you're working from home, that perpetually means you're on leave. Now, one great thing which has happened is, Sanya, that the entire shift, everyone has understood work can be done from home very well. Businesses have been running. Some of the businesses we are in have been growing. So that at least that myth has been broken, that paradigm has been shifted. And also, if you look at some of the statistics Keith talked about and Sudhanshu spoke about, that the gig workforce or the flexible workforce is growing. So ASSOCHAM has pointed out that the gig economy and the gig workers coming to the workforce will grow by 17% CAGR, which means a lot more people will come in. Some recent surveys also show that more housewives are now applying to jobs in the gig economy.
Exactly.
One, organizations are open to allow people to work from anywhere. Secondly, more and more women are now focusing a lot more on getting into the workforce through the gig economy route, which I think earlier they were a little close to. Now, Sudhanshu's point is absolutely valid, that diversity is not only gender. Unfortunately, a lot of published research even today is about that. So in the absence of any other data to say, okay, how many people from small town, how many ex-army officers, how many LGBTQs are coming into the workforce, I'm still going to refer to gender diversity as being the chunk. That's one side, and it gives us a lot of hope. The second side is also that there is equal amount of statistics and data which is getting published from many companies, which says women are constantly falling out of the workforce. So more and more women are getting so bogged down by their household chores or by their duties and responsibilities at home that the dropout continues to be high. If you look at a sample size of the gender diversity percentage in our country, whereas over the last 5 years, so much has been done. And I speak about that with a lot of passion because one part of my job is also to do a lot of research on diversity studies and focusing a lot on women. That percentage is dropping year on year. And unfortunately, even during the pandemic, it's dropping. So I really don't know where is this method to the madness and where are we really losing the plot? Now more opportunities are coming in. Organizations are opening up, but still more women are dropping out of the workforce, and percentage of representation across Indian corporations is not growing. It's a very small, minuscule number, but it's dropping year on year. So I would still say, Sanya, we're in a bit of a flux. Second wave has also hit us. So as we were preparing, saying, okay, now we're in a position of stability, all leaders across the call will agree with me when I say that last 1 month have again pushed us back into the same chaos we were in about a year and a half early, right? So I think it's a bit of flux, but I think there is hope. Opportunities are getting created. Now we just have to say this is the supply, and how do we kind of get the demand together with that? So that's my 2 bits on it.
Beautiful insights, ma'am. I really appreciate your thoughts about the women workforce here. And that's moving ahead towards, let's talk about Milind sir, I would like you to present your insights about. So as we see that the pandemic forced organizational transformations in terms of rethinking processes, measuring productivity and communication and socialization amongst others. So I would ask you to present your views on what are the transformation you perceive most important and should be further developed on. What do you think about it?
Very good afternoon to everyone, and thank you, Sanya, for having me here.
You're welcome, sir.
I think it's an extremely important question that we're deliberating upon currently. And to answer your question, let me share an example of how we have approached it in our organization, which is MTR, which is into the food space. So what we have tried to do is we have not tried to suddenly adopt a transformation or suddenly adopt a practice which we thought is a buzzword. What we have anchored ourselves are on 3 key things. Number 1 is, what is our purpose? And if you look at our vision and purpose, we always say that we are a friend in everyday life for our consumers. And that has to stay. Number two, whatever transformation we are talking about has to be anchored on value creation. Is that happening? And therefore, the third and the most important and the critical one is thereby what is our culture? And our culture is also embedded on very clear principles. So if we take these three things in our scope, we approach the entire thing within the lens of purpose, value, and culture. And then we said, if we look at purpose, if we have to be a friend in everyday life, we have to adopt this transformation towards higher standards of safety, hygiene, and well-being across the organization. What started off as something which was, learning without a playbook, learning without a blueprint, is now being established as a very, very standard practice, particularly in our context of the industry. And not only about setting it up through policies, processes, etc. The challenge for us and what we want to achieve is a cultural transformation towards this subject, where whether it is a factory, whether it is our sales, whether it is a corporate office, that orientation towards safety, well-being, and taking care of oneself is extremely important. And when we do that, we'll be able to do that for our consumers. Next, when we look at value creation, what is the transformation we think which will be the differentiator? We feel it will be the digital transformation. We all know about it. Yes, digital is sweeping the entire industry. But we had started this journey almost 4 or 5 years back. And I think we were correctly positioned at this point in time to make this as a differentiator and ensure that every point of the value chain, the digital revolution or the digital transformation creates the right impact for us. And accordingly, if we look at the culture, if we look at the processes, etc., another area which we feel that will undergo a transformation, and we are already working on it, is the way the organization is designed, the organization is structured. We have suddenly realized that those who are doing the doing are suddenly managing the doing. And these are, say, for example, whether it's sales, whether it's in operations, and we realize that technology has actually raised the game. And if we have raised the game, then probably there's an opportunity where now we see our supervisors and managers are in a better position to manage larger spans. And this also opens up the opportunity to create, agile teams. And agile teams cannot be a buzzword again, as I repeat. That it has to be program managed. We have to have a very clear focus, and we are already in the process of identifying prototype agile teams, which can be replicated and which can be scaled. And thereby, to make all this happen, the transformation that has to happen, we are focusing very strongly is we are putting premium on decision making. The ability of our leaders and managers it's not about taking the right decisions. It is about taking high quality decisions backed with data and analytics. Second, transformation, we are already treating it as one of the most priority areas, is how do we manage our talent? And we know that talent will be our scarcest resource. And while we are discussing this in our leadership management meetings, we are ensuring that we have our eye on whether the best player is managing the most critical skill. And as I said, all this together is finally tied up to our purpose, value, and culture. This is how we are managing our transformation.
Yeah, great to know, sir. So if I'll talk about the same as Milind sir is talking about the cultural and the digital transformation. So Keith sir, if I'll talk about what are your views about it, the transformational changes?
Yeah, I think to build on Milan's point, it's almost if he's at Cyient. I think the story is quite comparable in terms of our journey. We're principally working to put it into perspective. I think we can't underestimate the degree in which our employees or associates adopt technology and use technology. I think first and foremost, we should keep up with that challenge. At Cyient, certainly from our perspective, back to Milan's point, around the purpose, we've been very clear. We're using different technologies to talk to people differently, more frequently than we've ever done before. We probably used quite traditional methods before, just email somebody something or pick up a phone to them. I think the reality is people will become more accustomed to using app technology, different platforms. That's for one, certainly on that technology side. I would say certainly around our culture, we've been very clear that we're breaking down the old adage of you can't fail. It's a problem to fail. So we're creating a culture where we're almost investing in people to experiment, fail fast, and develop. So I think from our perspective, we are trying to, keep up, quite honestly, with the future of our employees and the capabilities of our employees. At the same time, making it clear in our communication from the top down to the bottom up that we are, on a journey to being this company that represents this. So I think today that is a big focus, the purpose. Most of us will find people moving across our industries and different skill sets, but they want to work for a company with a sense of purpose. I think that's fundamental, right? I think that's what's clear for us now in this pandemic. It's thrown up the necessity to have a purpose, a sense of belonging in our organization. And we're having to do it differently because everybody is stuck in their home, right? Or they're out in the field, or they're at their place of work, sometimes in a hybrid way. So it's really a acceleration of that.
Great to know, sir, about the thoughts of yours regarding the transformational changes here. So moving ahead, we have Ruhi ma'am. I would like to ask you that what do you think, how we can virtually build a strong organizational culture without the walls of an office space?
Yeah.
As you were sharing your thoughts about the same.
Absolutely. I just truly enjoyed what Keith just mentioned about, this word called purpose, and how the pandemic has moved huge amount of focus, both of the organizations and employees, on things which are larger than just business numbers. And if you really notice, Anya, all of us have been we're also HR professionals, leaders, but we're also employees. So, initially when this entire euphoria started of the work from home happening, we've gone through multiple shifts. And initially everyone was very excited. You would have people post pictures of the food they cooked every day on Instagram. And slowly fatigue started setting in. Boundaries got very blurred. So some of the good things which happened were when we specifically talk about culture. I think some of the things which happened by default and some of the things which organizations did later. The boundary between work and home got totally blurred. So work came home, which is your families would hear about stuff happening, what you were doing at work. But now you're technically sitting with your family, children in the background, children in front, and thereby your work became a part of everything you do at home. Second is that the organizations became very flexible about how they would view home. So initially, if you were doing a call from home, you'd be very careful that children have to be quiet. Or I've had situations when my cat walked across the laptop screen multiple times, and everyone's very happy about it. So this is a very good thing. So culturally, I would say one of the changes which happened is work and home came closer. Organizations and leaders became very, very comfortable with addressing people's families. They also became, I would say, I'm not getting the exact word for it, but also conscious of how the families are perceiving. So if a boss is to an extent raising his voice at a colleague or at his subordinate, people at home are viewing that. They're observing it. And that made our leaders far more conscious about their responsibilities towards their employees. And automatically, some of these cultural shifts started happening at home. Okay. The other thing which I think a lot of organizations did is it's a mindset that you have. We're programmed that way, that conversations which is about performance or open houses all should be done in person. Personally, a lot of leaders in our organizations, and I'm now a part of 2 startups, so we're building everything from scratch. And actually, in one of them, for 80% of our workforce got recruited and deployed. Our business got launched during the COVID scenario, so everyone was so uncomfortable. And bosses would often feel that, let's just call people, make 200 people stand across the table and talk to them. But that's gone. So I think what organizations started doing is creating this virtual culture. What does virtual culture mean? Creating certain norms which perhaps did not even exist previously. What time would you have meetings in? In fact, I've heard of organizations, and in fact we did that there's something called a rule of 9. Unless you can prove otherwise, only 9 people should be in a meeting. So otherwise, unnecessarily, it's very common, right? When you're at work, you also come, and 15 people are sitting in one room discussing, out of which only maybe 5 are required. Yeah. So, meeting times became far more sharper. Milind spoke about the agile way of working. People started defining it. What is agile? How do you take decisions faster when you're not in person? So you can't walk into your boss's cabin to discuss something. So what? How will you have these agile decisions being taken place? So virtual culture, creating norms for managers, how they would deal, meeting timings, work-life balance. And in fact, I kind of, one of the leaders I was talking to told me that earlier traveling for them would mean traveling out of the country. Now, when there no travel is happening, people became far more rigorous and disciplined in town halls. Because what do you need to do? You need to log in. Like we are having a webinar right now. We would have been having this in a conference room somewhere. We're all here. Effectively, I can hear each other's views. I also think that it makes you far more sharper. You're able to focus much more on what the other individual is saying because there's no noise. Imagine the same thing was happening in a classroom or in a banquet room. I would be looking at my neighbor, some phone would ring. Right now, I'm only focusing on what each HR leader is saying and they're adding so much value. So I think that's the entire disciplined rigor of creating these things. Last but not the least, I think the HR teams have really, really come to the eye of the storm, if I may put it that way. And while they've always been doing a fantastic job, I'm very proud of the entire fraternity, the way they took everything into their hands and the way they've responded, the way HR teams have actually really connected with employees. And it's not in my organization, as I talk to more and more HR heads. And while they don't know more than the other person, but you got to be holier than thou. So you don't have the answer, but you can't say, okay, I'm in the same boat as you. So I think HR teams have gotten together. They have connected with each and every employee. So a lot of good feedback from companies about how HR teams were empathetic, how they reached out to their families and connecting with each and every employee on calls or virtual. So I think these are the things. And just one last point, I want to elaborate on it. There is a huge need now to get our managers, middle managers, ready for this virtual era. They still have a lot of mindset, while leadership would be changing slowly because of what they have experienced. But how do you equip your middle managers to now handle performance, recognition, compensation, biases, everything virtually would be a very important test. So
great to know. Yeah, very well said, ma'am. So I would also want to know your point of view, Mr. Sudhanshu sir, that how would you say that how we can build a virtually strong organization culture when we are not in the office space? What do you think about the same?
So, in the initial phase, after 3 months of this first lockdown, in our company, in the executive committee, we started discussing about, are we deviating from our country? Then the 3 points have come very clearly to all our discussion. 5 of us sitting almost with masks, we were discussing all these things. And we found that, there are 3 key components of culture which is not going to change. The first component is values, the second one is behavior, third one is actions. Now, we looked at, values are not going to change because people are working in different places. The organizations spread across the country, 17,000 people work across. So values are not going to change. Is the behavior going to change because there is a work from home, there is a pandemic in place? The change, we found that, whatever change is going to come, that is not going to really impact too much in terms of the behavior. People will get more oriented to, practice how do they really balance work life. That is the only thing we need to do. So we had ample of communication. I don't have to reiterate what Ruchi just mentioned. We have done almost a similar way. But the third one, which we are little mindful, is actions. Because actions are going to directly impact the organizational performance and also our commitment to the society. Because if people are not monitored on action, many jobs are required to be monitored day by day. It is not that you can monitor once in a year. Leadership jobs you can monitor once in a while, but some jobs day by day monitoring. So are you going to maintain quality standards? Are you going to maintain productivity standards? That is what the culture we want to build. So last couple of months, I mean to say around 7 to 9 months, the entire focus of our communication, orientation and dashboarding was related to actions, which are so the other thing I want to just mention that we mandated no meetings should be more than half an hour. We realized beyond half an hour, people will start talking a lot of English and there will be no substance. And then it was decided that any meeting is being held, if the person who is calling for the meeting, he is not circulating the write-up about the meeting or the agenda about the meeting and the documents about the meeting 1 day in advance, that person should cancel that meeting. And practically, we saw a lot of cancellations happening because if I am unable to send the details a day in advance, that means I am not prepared. So we found this is emerging all around actions. How do we really maintain the action culture which Tata Coffee used to have? We maintain this. So our entire focus was action, behavior, and values. We found action is where I think we need to give a little additional focus. Values and behavior are intact. They are our colleagues. They have been hired through a process. They have been living the Tata values. So we didn't bother too much on these two aspects. That's all in a nutshell, precise manner. Thank you.
Very well, sir. Thank you, sir. Milind, sir, if I'll talk about the same to you, what are your views about having no office space, and then how we can build the same culture, the work culture around us? What your point of views are for the same?
Yeah, so very similar to what Sudhanshu just now said. So in MTR, we have done a very focused intervention to ensure that this entire subject of managing culture, whether it is hybrid, whether it is in office, whether it is virtual, is driven by how is culture defined within the organization. So for us, the culture is defined on two very important pillars. Number one are the values, which Sudhanshu mentioned. We also have values, but at Ookla, globally, and thereby at MTR, we have ensured that these values are not left open to interpretations. So these are codified into 10 leadership principles, and subsequently for each one, there is a 3 behavior, thereby 30 behaviors, which all managers or all employees are aware of what is to be demonstrated. Number 2 is our important, very popular employer brand theme, which we say are home to grow. And as an employer, we say we are home to grow, where people are eager to learn. We say we find like minds. We are be global locally. And also we say that we continue the love. So these 2 important pillars are non-negotiable. So what was important to us was actually very simple. So unusual times required unusual wisdom. So we had to find out methods of deploying this culture in the new normal or the new situation, which we call the hybrid. Hence, our engagement framework, which is defined around physical, emotional, and the cultural well-being, was deployed by using various other means. For example, when we spoke about the physical well-being, as a foods company, we always had a food appreciation culture within the organization being driven. So there were various events which were conducted in the past. This time we conducted that celebrations at MTR completely virtually. In fact, there are teams and families who participated in the cooking events virtually, and the entire company watched how it is being cooked, how the recipe was being prepared, and it was learned completely virtually. Wow. So the same experience, same intervention, no compromise, but it was only the platform got changed. Similarly, when it came to our emotional well-being, when we had to connect with people, we started with a program called Reach Out. Okay. Reach Out means the leaders identified people and bucketed them into various categories. Say, for example, those who are the new joiners, who are the ones who are staying without families, who are the extroverts, who are the high performers, who are the low performers. So we are aware that each type of employee would have different challenges at that point in time. So the idea was to reach out with them with a clear format of how to address each of these buckets. And we then exchange notes to see where is that action required. Similarly, the HR reached out to everybody in the sales function to connect just to ask, how are you? Yeah. Similarly, we also had a third-party engagement to engage people in terms of counseling services. And similarly, many such activities were rolled out, and all the events that we otherwise did physically, for example, the annual R&R were done completely virtually. Even the Ookla Growth Awards, which is a global event for which we actually traveled to Norway, was done completely virtually with the completely same experience. So the sum and substance, what I'm trying to summarize here is that the anchor is same, the base is same. So what we want to achieve is same. It's only what the means change. And when the means change and the purpose remains constant, I think we have a very enriching learning experience. And as I say this, we are still learning. We are still experimenting. But so far, I think we had excellent engagement score results that we got in the month of December. So that's the submission from our organization in this subject.
Very well said, sir. I really like the reach out program what you organized, and wherein all the team members and family members are getting in all together for learning new recipes and cooking. Actually, that is very much needed when you're at the at home, and you're not working in the office space. You want to have that emotional connect. That is called the inclusion. You have to have that bond with the teammates and the managers and everyone. So that is the best part I liked about it. And moving ahead towards, I'll say that how should leaders and managers prepare for a hybrid workspace? As we remember in our PowerPoint presentation, when Miss Anjali Raghuvanshi was speaking about the same, I would talk about, starting with Miss Ruhi, that what are your views about that? How should leaders and managers prepare for a hybrid workspace? We'll move ahead with the same question, and I would like to get to know the insights about the same with everyone.
Sure. So I think, Sanya, very important question, and we speak about the gig economy, and we speak about the fact that flexible folks are coming into the workforce, and it's changing the way we do business, whether it's banks or retail organizations, IT, etc. But one of the things I still feel is that how are we perceiving this shift? When you talk about hybrid, there are two parts to it. One is that the workforce itself is hybrid composition. You have gig workers, you have permanent employees, you have flexible workforce which are working. And then second is also that in the hybrid, you mean that there are some people who will only work from home, some people will come into office sometimes work from home. So these two dynamic models of work will be coming in. I think the most important thing is in the first part, which is when you're getting the flexible workforce in. I still believe there's a lot of work to be done where it comes to the culture. Are you creating an inclusion culture? Are you creating policies which are inclusive, or only looking at this workforce using a hyperbole here to exploit them? Are you, because a lot of this workforce is experts. So how are you valuing their contribution? I know of organizations which will have this hybrid workforce come in and say that, okay, come in for 3 days a week only. But eventually, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So we may talk about culture and a lot of these practices, they're beautiful words, but finally what people experience will eventually either encourage or discourage them to be a part of this workforce. So are you respecting their time boundaries? Are you creating policies where simple things like social benefits, Mediclaim, security benefits are applicable to these? Or are you creating boundaries where, employees will only get this and this workforce will only get this? So I still believe there we are still very nascent, and organizations need to do a lot about practices, policies, culture, and sheerly understanding what is the strategic imperative in getting these people on board. So that's number one. Till that assimilation happens on ground, these will remain words and they won't push beyond a particular point. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is this entire thing about the hybrid workforces itself. So I think that leaders, organizations, and HR teams really need to curate experiences. They have to identify what is this culture and curate it in words. So if it is all about values, how are leaders and managers transferring those values down to the last common person on ground? So I think Milan just spoke about the behaviors, which are the virtues of the behaviors which are written. HR teams then need to pick up these examples, which are now in the virtual world, and start evangelizing them. So that, there's a very clear culture defined, which was in the erstwhile state. There were values defined, which were in that reality. The paradigm has shifted in this reality. How's that culture manifesting? Someone talked about the fact that only half an hour meetings. What value does that talk to? So you've got to kind of curate and nail down each and every value and experience to very fine examples. And that's how this entire thing evangelizes. The second thing I spoke about is that the new workforce you're getting in, how is it that you are actually assimilating them from a policy, from a compensation, from rewards, all perspectives, not just the soft, also the hard. The third thing is how are leaders now looking at concepts of mentoring and coaching? Earlier what would happen is employees were on the floor and they would see a leader interact with someone and observe what exactly is going on. A lot of that coaching would happen on ground by people observing behaviors of leaders, but that's not happening. So in the current context, how are you going to promote networking? How are we going to promote mentoring? How are we going to ensure that organizationally we have sponsors for a high potential talent? So translating a lot of these on-ground coaching, mentoring practices into what that would be in the virtual space, right? So that's the second thing. The third thing would be that you are looking at flexibility only in terms of either a flexible workforce or person working out of office, person working out of home, or hybrid. Can we look at people working flexibly? Is it possible that you just say, okay, in a work week, you need to clock in so many hours and do it at your own, do it as per your own convenience day and nothing on Monday? The organization, does that actually linking to the first question you would ask me in terms of diversity, I think that will really help bringing back into the workforce. If you're able to give them the flexibility of not just working from anywhere, but also the time they are clocking in.
Okay, very well said, ma'am. You want to add on to it?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Please.
Yeah, just one last point was about biases. I still feel that now with the offices opening, there is still a propensity I still see amongst leaders. I don't know the other HR heads have experienced that or not. That people still have that bias for people coming to work, saying, I want to see that person. And how would you ensure that these biases don't play out in promotions, in performance management, and ensure that the HR teams and leaders keep addressing these unconscious biases? That's my last point. Those were my tips.
That's very well said. It's a beautiful insight. You are so much having so many key points over here, and we are having such a great panel. So if we'll talk about the same, Mr. Keith, sir, what are your point of views about the same if we'll talk about? So as we are approaching, please go ahead.
Sure. I think Rishi summarized it very well. I think, fundamentally, we should probably see this as an opportunity globally, the pandemic, as an opportunity to rethink how we're doing it. I think that the panel have referenced the fact that they're changing maybe their orientation towards culture process. I think fundamentally the future work is rapidly evolving. I think the fact that we've got to harness new technologies, effectively lead differently, engage the workforce differently is critical, right? We probably plan year on year before. I think the reality is, one, I think we have to build, intrinsic trust within the organization to make sure that we're comfortable with the hybrid way of working or the different ways of working that we have. I think that's one that we have to have from leadership down to make sure we develop that. I think the importance, as it's been said before, around the purpose, the purpose of being an organization that's going to differentiate the employee, the community, the organization itself, or the community and wider world around them, I think is important. I think for us at Sign, it's clear we've been on a journey around diversity and inclusion and won awards around the world for some of the stuff that we've done, but we are nowhere near finished, and nor will probably anybody be anywhere near finished. One is that you've got to, if anything, focus on the inclusive piece now more than ever. The reality is we need to have a workforce that might not want to join us today, but certainly would want to join us in the next 2 years. I mean, people listening to this call and this panel should be thinking, okay, I'm happy where I am now, but I'd love to work for this person. I'd love to work for that company. That is critical now. And that's going to be a major play in terms of the branding and also the faith that they will have in that organization moving forward. I don't have more to add than Rishi has already kind of outlined before, but that would be my point.
Great. What about your point of view, Milind sir, if we'll talk about the same, as it's been summarized beautifully?
Yeah, thanks. So I think Rui and Keith have actually covered the what part of it. So I don't want to repeat and add to the what list because that can be a huge wish list. But I only share an example of what we have done on the how part of it. How should managers actually prepare for hybrid workplace? So the two key themes that are emerging for us in this industry and this company was about creating an agile organization. It's not that we are not agile, but how do we define agility? So as an MTR, we have established a very clear framework of agility and involve the top 25 leaders in co-creating it. That's number one. Number two, for the current year strategy, we have made the theme very clear. Strong today, stronger tomorrow. And why stronger tomorrow? Because Ookla in India is growing. We are growing. We now have a large space to manage and huge growth opportunities. So it is important for the top 25 leaders to scale up. So what we did is, with all these 25 leaders, we have created their individual agility action plan. What is it that they will do to drive that agility, which was actually based on a diagnostic that we did around the agility framework. Also, we made all of them co-created My Stronger Tomorrow plan, including myself, including all the CXOs. And this entire intervention was created with these 25 leaders across around 3 to 4 workshops, done internally by my CMO and myself, and supported by all the CXOs. And it has emerged as a beautiful exercise where people have taken very strong objectives of seeing themselves at the next level, and which is also partnered by the other stakeholders. So the point I'm driving home is we have embarked on a very interesting journey, and we are confident that as we are constantly reviewing this in every 45 days, we will actually see a stronger tomorrow for the organization by the end of the year, and obviously going beyond. So the substance is that, yes, we know what all we need to do, but I think for us it was important to pin it into how to execute and how to make that change visible. And that is where the rubber hits the road. So that's my response to this.
Great. So moving ahead towards Sudhanshu, sir, as we had 2 whats now, so I guess we should have 2 hows now. So what about you? How you are going to go for it?
So, actually, the points are very relevant. I just wanted to share some of the experience what we have done, addition to what, Keith, Ruhi and Milan has already said. So generally the workforce planning, organization planning, workforce planning process starts in Tata Coffee in the month of October for the next financial year. So for Keith, the financial year is April to March. So we start planning from October. So this time we have done something different. We have actually talked to all our unit heads to give the workforce planning in 3 different segments. How many positions they require part-time, how many positions they require at flexible resource, and how many permanent resources required in the structure itself. So we have questioned the structure, and that actually took a lot of time because it is a change in the orientation. They used to give some number and we have to kind of maintain the number for the year. This time we have started asking what are the numbers, and that back and forth happened almost for 2 months, and we got to know this is the number now, and that is significant change in the way the organization was done earlier. That is one. So we thought of let us look at workforce planning. Then the second one is we have to look at the hiring process. For that we started engaging. How do we really hire flexible resources? How do we hire people working from home? How do we hire people for 2 months? Or how do we have people who can come to the office only for 2 hours? So this engagement, we identified some 10 talent acquisition partners outside and had a roadshow. Then we identified 3 of them who will supply. So that is the second action we have done. The third one is actually we are changing the performance management system, because if you adopt the same performance management system for all 3 categories of employees, it is not going to really address. So we are changing that, and also we are looking at changing the compensation structure, the way we pay to employees. So these 4 activities, I think, I just wanted to borrow what Keith just mentioned, this is first step, and at least I have another 20 steps to travel in the same journey. It is not going to end because it is tremendous effort, and you don't know if anything else happen as a pandemic, you may have to change the entire structure and work from office only. We never know anything about that. Right now, we're presuming this is the way people will work, this is the way. So we are assuming that if this is going to continue, the 3 fundamental parts of the function, workforce planning, we have started changing. Hiring, we have started changing. Compensation and performance management put together, we're going to change from April 1st, that is tomorrow onwards. They're already planning in place. And of course, culture is really supporting making this things to happen. That's all from me.
Great. So we really had such a learned discussion over here for the topic. And it is very great that with this, I'll conclude our session with great insights. Thank you all the panel for joining us, giving us the time and presenting your views on the topic. And it was very nice attending and, seeing the gracious presence of yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sonia. And thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Very valuable.
Thank you, Milan. Thank you. Nice to meet you.